ask you something. If you should read something from the Quran and I read something like that, would you tell me that it's okay to read it like that?
Okay, right.
Yeah, and it was actually...
Which person wrote about it?
كن سعيدا كن فريدا عش بفخر في الحياة لا تبالي فالمعالي بالتحدي.
Did it happen?
I believe it did happen, yes.
You believe it did?
Yes.
Yet no one else reported it?
But it doesn't literally mean people got out of their grave.
What does it literally mean then when saints come out of their grave and enter into the towns? What does that mean? Other than they got out of their graves and entered into the towns. What does it mean?
I want to ask you something. If you should read something from the Quran and I read something like that, would you tell me that it's okay to read it like that?
What are you talking about?
If I read something...
I'm asking you. Well, tell me how you read it. Look.
If I read a verse from the Quran in the way that you've just understood that verse...
Give me an example.
I don't know.
And then I'll smash your analogy to bits.
Off the top of my head, I can't remember. But I can tell you, it doesn't mean what you think it means.
Okay. What does it mean then?
See, it means that people. It means that people realised who they were and they woke up in the spirit.
No, it doesn't say that.
It doesn't say it. But for example,
Shall I read it?
Hold on. For example,
let me read it.
But an example, it does say.
I'll read it. Because no disrespect. There's no need to paraphrase. I'm telling you what Matthew said. And the question is this.
Yes.
Right.
But you can't understand it. You can't just read it like that all the time. You can't just read.
Well, I'm going to read it, and you tell me how it should be read. Yeah, fair enough.
Read it with the context, please. When you read the Bible.
Because it says in Adam all died. Does that all of a sudden mean that? But it says in Adam all died. Does that mean that no human being was alive?
Say it again, sorry.
It says in Adam all died. Does that mean that human beings were roaming the earth?
What are you talking about?
That's a good point.
What's a good point? Well, sorry. Sorry. The crowd is intervening. What's a good point?
You said. The gospel says.
It's a good point. Just remember it.
Repeat what you just said. The gospel says in Adam all died, but in Christ everybody's made alive. So we're saying things can easily get taken out of context.
Okay, well let's read the context, isn't it? Okay. Let's read it, isn't it? And then you can tell me whether it happened or not. Yeah. All right. First thing we'll ask is, was there an earthquake? Good start. Fair enough.
So that's what I'm saying. If you read it like that, then basically...
I'll explain the problem.
That means that no human was roaming the earth after Adam.
No, because you believe when Adam died, you're talking about in his sin, and that we're all going to die in sin, isn't it? By die,
spiritually, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So we know exactly what he's talking about.
Yes.
It's not talking about physical death, is it?
But it doesn't say he died physically or spiritually. But we know it's on about spiritual.
Listen, we'll read.
So then, why don't you read that like that then?
Okay.
All of a sudden it means something different when you want it.
Who, me?
That's what I said, if I really want to get into this, I can.
Let's get into it then. Let's get into it. Your man here thinks you're making sense. I think you're making nonsense, to be honest with you. But we can see.
Well, I'm not the only one that seems to understand what I'm saying.
Well, only your cheerleader seems to understand what you're saying.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay, so what I'll do, I'll read this verse, and then we'll read the verse you're referring to, and we'll see what the context of it, yeah? We'll read the context of this verse, yeah? Okay. This is in the Gospel of Matthew, yeah? This is, for the benefit of the camera, Matthew 27.
Because you know when you said about the zombies as well, you said they're walking zombies. Well, if you want to play like that game, then clearly we've been walking zombies on the earth for millions of years.
Okay.
For the minute Adam.
Matthew 27:49.
Right.
Okay. And the rest said, let us see whether Elijah cometh to save him. Yeah? And Jesus cried again with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit. And behold, the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom. Now imagine we're watching a movie now, yeah? Imagine we're watching a movie. And behold, the veil of the temple was rent in twain from top to the bottom. What does that mean? Torn. Yeah?
Now, do you believe that was an actual temple?
Okay.
Because remember, Jesus says, this body is the temple. Unless you actually mean an actual physical building.
Do you believe there was a temple with a veil on it that ripped or not?
Yeah.
You do believe?
Yeah.
A physical temple? Building?
No, this is the people.
So the temple that with the curtain tore is not a building.
Yes, it says in the New Testament. It says if those who don't see are still blind because the veil has not been removed.
Right.
The curtain.
So just so I understand,
It doesn't literally mean, oh look, there's a building there.
Chris. So you're saying it wasn't a veil on a temple? That's what you're saying?
No, not a building. No.
There was no building and there was no sheet on it that tore. That's what you're claiming. Okay, alhamdulillah. Right.
That's what I'm saying. You have to be very careful when reading these.
No. We're going to challenge your claim, but that's your claim.
Okay.
And I want you to support that claim with some kind of evidence. All right? All right. And the earth did quake.
Okay.
And the rocks were rent. What does that mean? The earth did quake and the rocks were rent. What does that mean?
I haven't looked into that, but I'll have to.
What do you think it means?
Say it again.
The earth did quake and the rocks were rent.
Doesn't happen.
Thank you.
No, but not literally an earthquake. I can tell you.
So you said not literally an earthquake?
Not an earthquake. What is it? It means basically that because you know, for example, even in Islam know this as well. When
please don't admit Islam into your flipping nonsense answers.
When something happens, for example, a resurrection like that, right, or a death happens, or something like that, that helps the whole creation. The whole creation, you know, the veil is open, and you know the whole creation is aware of it. You know what I mean? That's what it means. Not literally, oh look, the rocks are.
So you're saying the picture being painted is not this then? That Jesus is on the cross, he cries out, there's an earthquake, the place goes dark, the temple, you said that didn't happen. When you watch the movie, have you seen the movie Passion of the Christ? Have you seen what happens?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying happens?
I admit maybe it went dark. Like, I don't dismiss it.
No. The earth did quake. That means the earth moved. The rocks were rent, which means the rocks were broken.
Well, I don't literally see that as a. They may have done it like that.
Okay.
How can you?
Okay.
Hold on.
Shall I make it easy for you?
Once again, if you want about spiritually,
so it says not an earthquake.
How can you? If you're going to make a film out of it, how can you put an?
Let me just get this on camera, Chris.
How can you?
Are you saying this is not an earthquake? It's not an earthquake. All right. You sure? All right. Now the centurion.
It means it means that everybody will literally just woke up inside of.
Now the centurion and they that were watching Jesus, when they saw the earthquake. What? So they saw the earthquake.
Okay.
So according to the Gospel of John, they saw the earthquake.
Of course.
But you said there wasn't an earthquake.
Of course, you can witness it because if you feel, how often do we say if you feel something?
Let me continue.
They all felt it at the same time.
Of people that followed this man agreed all upon what you see. What you are claiming here that people are disagreeing. Can you bring me a writing of another disciple of Jesus?
Yes.
That contradicts all of them?
Yes, I can.
An easy one?
Yeah, an easy one. Gospel of Mark, the first Gospel. When he says this adulterous nation asks for a sign.
I'm sorry?
The sign of Jonah, yes?
Yeah, you mentioned it a while back, I think. Yeah.
All right, I'll make it easy. Jesus says in the Gospel of Mark, this adulterous nation asks for a sign. No sign shall be given to them. And then Jesus leaves and walks away. Right? In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus says this adulterous nation asks for a sign. No sign will be given but the sign of Jonah. And the Queen of the South will bear witness and testify against them because she bear witness for Solomon, and one greater than Solomon is here. And the Ninevites will bear witness against this generation because they bore witness to Jonah, and one greater than Jonah is here. All right. The Gospel of Matthew. No sign shall be given but the sign of Jonah. So the Son of Man, so as Jonah was in the belly of the earth for 3 days, 3 nights, so the Son of Man shall be in the belly of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights. All right. So we have 3 accounts of the same incident. Okay? We have 2 accounts where Jesus is not given any indication of rising in 3 days. All right? We have an account in Matthew where Jesus is rising in 3 days. We look at the actions of the disciples after the apparent resurrection, and none of them were expecting a 3-day resurrection. So this is an indication that maybe the Gospel of Matthew's been embellished, right? Just an indication. Then Matthew talks about what of the crucifixion. the dead rising from the earth? Well, you don't give me your, don't pull your face. This is a eyewitness testimony.
All right. Okay. No. I'm not talking about disputing that.
No. Don't dispute it.
What I'm saying is.
Okay. So you believe. So let's just clarify. You believe at the time of the crucifixion, when Jesus cried his last, the earth went dark. There was earthquakes. The tombs opened up. The dead rose from their graves and entered into the city, and many people saw them.
I believe it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why do Mark not say this, Luke not say this, John not say this, or anybody outside the Gospel of Matthew say this?
Well, they were talking about different things.
No. We're talking about the dead.
Yes.
Rising from their graves, entering the towns.
Yeah.
Okay. Why is nobody talking? Why are the Roman historians not talking about this? Why is Irenaeus not talking about this? Why is Tacitus not talking about this? Why is Josephus not talking about this? Why is there no historians talking about the dead rising from the grave?
All right. Let me give you another example as to why it might not have been recorded. Can I give you one?
Yes.
The Vesuve. Explosion of the Vesuve.
What?
Vesuve. It's in Sicily.
In Sicily?
Historical event.
It's a historical event,
right.
not to do with the Bible.
Volcano eruption.
Vesuvius. Vesuvius. Yes. Yeah, I'm aware. Yeah.
French.
No. Okay. I'm with you.
Vesuvius. The whole city.
Pompeii. Yeah.
Pompeii. Under ashes.
Yes.
Now we have seen when you go there, you see the. Of destruction.
Okay.
You see,
Yep,
you would assume that a lot of Romans would have written about this. I mean, there's the whole town disappearing.
Well, how do you know about it?
It's actually because one person has written about it.
Okay, right.
And it was actually.
Which person wrote about it?
I don't remember the person.
See, here's what you got to say to me.
No, but here's what my point.
How long ago was it?
Actually.
No, I'm going to tell you why your analogy. I'm going to tell you why your analogy fails. I'm going to tell you why your analogy fails.
Now, can I finish? Just before you you'll make your point. An event of such scale would have made the news everywhere, but not everyone at the time could write.
Okay, fine. No problem.
Fair enough. Not everyone could write.
Okay.
And it's just one person in a letter mentioning it, and otherwise, if we hadn't discovered this letter and hadn't discovered the ruins, we would never know about this.
Right.
So does it make what this person write wrong or right?
No. I'll tell you the problem you got. Yeah. Well, I don't know if I'm going to. You're going to be more nuanced than I. But I'm going to go back to this, right? You're correct. If one man wrote about it. Yeah. Now your analogy will stand if there was a historian of the time who was around writing about things that occurred in that area, but didn't write that. Your analogy would stand.
Yeah.
So you can give me the name of the historian who wrote this letter, and any of his contemporaries who didn't.
No, it wasn't a historian. It wasn't even a.
Just someone wrote a letter. All right. Here's your problem.
Yeah.
Do you believe Mark was an eyewitness to what he saw?
No, he wasn't.
Okay. Oh my God, this is getting so. No, he's honest, but what I'm saying is the problem he's got now is that Matthew took 70% of his work from Mark. So now I'm confused.
Are you sure?
Yes. This is not me, this is biblical scholars, not me. Don't shoot the messenger.
Okay. They assume that.
No, don't assume it. It's verbatim.
Okay, now, what they are saying, what I've understood, I've not, to be honest, I'm not a scholar. I'm reading bits and pieces. I haven't read a lot of books, right? I might be wrong, but what I understand is because it is the shortest, therefore it should be the first.
No.
Was that the argument?
No. The argument is this. Because 70% of Matthew and Luke are both found verbatim in the Gospel of Mark, and the timeline of the Gospel of Mark was written just after Paul died, and then 10 years later Matthew and Luke.
People, so when would you date this? Matthew
would have been about 60-something. 62, 63. And then 10 years later was Mark was 62, 63, and then Matthew and Luke came 10 years later. And then John came 30 years later.
Can I put an objection to Matthew being
10 years later? Oh, Matthew being before?
Yeah.
When's your claim?
Matthew was written by Jews.
Written by Jews?
No, written for Jews. I'm missing.
Right.
Written for Jews, right?
Right.
Now,
with what intention?
sorry, to convert them.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
convert them, fair enough. But as a historical buff, I know that during the siege of Jerusalem, most of the population was decimated.
Right.
People had left.
Right.
So who was he trying to convert? Who?
Because if they've dispersed. You've got to understand,
Yeah,
look, this religion of Jesus was Jewish based.
it was Jewish based.
The church wanted to usurp it, and Paul wanted to usurp it from this base. Paul had a problem with the disciples because they were preaching against what he was preaching.
I have, you know,
نرجع فأبهجنا يا شعلة نور والله يا ديمة خير وعطاء ويمام نقاء
كن سعيدا كن فريدا عش بفخر في الحياة لا تبالي